You live in Taiwan. How afraid are you that there'll be an invasion?
Well, everyone always asks, when is Xi Jinping going to order the PLA to invade? And I say it's not a question of when, it's a question of why. He could have a bad night and wake up one morning and say, you know what? I'm tired of waiting. Let's go. Taiwan could declare independence and he's going to go. So they are preparing for war. They're also trying to do the peaceful means. You remember the 2005 anti-succession law, which says there's peaceful means and non-peaceful means. But when they decide that peaceful means is no longer going to work, they want to be able to use the military to achieve their objectives. So, recently, when President Lai was sworn in, a few days later, the PLA and the Chinese Coast Guard surrounded Taiwan and got very close to Taiwan's territorial waters within 24 miles. 12 miles is the territorial boundary. So they had 12-mile leeway, but that's on the ship side. Maybe it'd take a few minutes to cross 12 miles. But if you're a jet and you're flying within 24 miles, that's like a minute difference. And so what they're doing again, they're choking Taiwan. They're making the space in which Taiwan has time to react to something smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like fighting in a corner. You don't want to fight in a corner, but China's pushing them into a corner so that they have less and less ability to counter it. So even though people portrayed the exercise as another exercise, it was actually a lot worse than it had been in the past because not only they had gotten closer, they also had used their Coast Guard, which I had been discussing that the Coast Guard is going to be used for a blockade or a quarantine or whatever politically correct term you want to use against Taiwan. So this is the first time we saw a lot of ships from the Coast Guard show up and participate with the PLA Navy. There were no missiles fired, so no one got excited. But that's exactly what China wants people to do, not get excited. The frog in the water. They don't want the frog to jump out. They want the frog to just continue to be lazy and sit around and watch the PLA Navy and the PLA and the Coast Guard, which is under the CMC, get closer and closer to Taiwan. And recently, there was an incident where a PRC speedboat decided to go from China to the mouth of the Tamsui River, which is the river that goes into Taipei, and the Coast Guard, luckily, the Taiwanese Coast Guard caught the ship, and surprise, surprise, the pilot of the ship was a retired PLA Navy captain. I guess they don't teach navigation really well in the PLA Navy.
Oh, we don't have to worry about a war then if they can't even know where they're going, because that wasn't planned. That is amazing. Like to send like a former PLA person into Taiwan's rivers to scout things out, test reaction times. So yeah, you're still living in Taiwan. No, not worried.
Yeah, well, I have less things to worry about. I don't have to worry about fentanyl coming into Taiwan. I don't have to worry about the over 10,000 Chinese potentially PLA soldiers floating around the United States.
I mean, you got the whole PLA army on your doorstep. That's bigger. But yeah, it's so you mentioned like the US is trying to create, like, obviously other countries are aware of what China is doing, that there's this new era coming and that they are trying to create alliances to counter this. Is this too little too late?
I don't think so. And I think, for example, this month or next month, at the end of this month, is going to be RIMPAC, the large exercise that the U.S. does every 2 years in the Indo-Pacific. And this is the first time that Taiwan will be participating in this exercise. And the U.S. Starting last year is starting to train the ROC military both in Taiwan and in the United States. Over 500 are rotating in and out of the United States, getting training, learning how to kill PLA soldiers, so that when they're brought in body bags back to China, to the one child families, they'll understand what it means to have no future. So I think there's a lot of ways that we in the West and Taiwan can fight China even before they show up. And one of the ways to do it is like your show, is to emphasize the weaknesses of China and to point out to even the Chinese people, if they can get access to your show and understand it, is that it's not in their interest, in their family interest, to have their children die for the Communist Party.
That reminds me, we should try to get Chinese subtitles or something for the show.
Yeah. You said that the Taiwan's going to be at RIMPAC officially?
Yes. According to the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023, a year and a half ago, the U.S. Congress and President Biden signed it. They're officially inviting them. Now, what level of participation is probably more like an observer for the first time. But still, the fact is that they're going to be participating, and all those 40 countries that are participating are participating. So that means that I don't have a problem with Taiwan participating.
None of them are in these agreements where...
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Well, wasn't it just a few years ago that China was in RIMPAC?
Yes, absolutely.
Things can change.
Yeah.
I mean, I also remember when we started interviewing people like you or Jim Fennell or like a lot of Grant Newsham, people who are on the military side, one of the things they talked about was Taiwan needs to be in RIMPAC.
Yes.
And
because of them talking about it on our show, the Biden
Congress
administration
and
and
the Biden
Congress were like, you know what? Thank you.
They listen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a lot of pressure to, have the weight of the world on our shoulders. But
And the U.S. government could probably donate some money to your show, right? I mean, that's...
I wish.
That'd be a double-edged sword, though.
That is true. I could maybe buy a panda with it, though.